I can turn the air down if that helps, but...
No. Actually, our last interview was kind of windy because we recorded it right in front of a air conditioning vent.
Oh, okay.
Which caused some audio quality problems, but it was just something of note next time is I'll just move away from air conditioning vents.
Fair enough.
Because we were like right on it in the convention center.
Yeah. You've got some coming out there.
Oh yeah, no, it's not. This might be the best, most isolated episode I've recorded yet because we're in a car. So what's your name and where are we?
Hi, I'm Jake Birkett from Grey Alien Games, and we're in West Dorset at the moment, where you're on vacation.
Yeah, and close to where you live?
Yeah, very close to where I live. We've just been up to Egerton, which is an Iron Age hill fort with wonderful views, and now I'm driving you back to your hotel along a high road with, again, some really cool things to look at on the way.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed from us hanging out today is like you're super passionate about old things, like really old things. And I'm kind of curious, like how that, like, is that something that's an influence on the games you make?
Yeah, big time. Like, so we did Regency Solitaire, which was set in the Georgian period, 1812. And for that, my wife and I, we went to sort of various locations and checked out old buildings, went to museums and checked stuff out. And now we're making Shadowhand, our sort of Highwaywoman themed card game and RPG game. That's set in 1770, so it's even older. I just got to get past this person on the road.
Yeah, so we're right now doing this, like we're on these narrow roads, so you have to kind of like pull over to let people pass.
Yeah.
So
some people are nervous reversers, right? They don't like reversing. So yeah, Shadowhand is set in the West Country, and we've been to sort of places like Dartmoor and looked at standing stones, and we've looked at castles, and we based it on, where we live really, and the sort of vibe of this place. But I'm fascinated in even older history than 1770s, so medieval stuff, going back further, Roman stuff, before that Iron Age, Bronze Age, and even Stone Age, and all of that stuff is in the local area. So you can see stone circles here, tombs, Roman forts, all within a stone's throw, really.
So is that like kind of game setting wise? Is that kind of what stuff you'd want to explore?
Yeah, I mean, we might. Who knows what will happen after Shadowhand? We could roll back further in time and keep going back. It's just inspirational to me, and I mean, I've always been a big fan of RPGs as well. I like Darkest Dungeon, obviously.
That's pretty good.
Just because I've always been into that sort of historical side of things, and as a kid, I would run around these castles and go home and read Dungeons and Dragons manuals. So, so it's always been a part of my upbringing, and I've tried to put it into my games because I feel living in this location gives us a unique insight to the history, and if we can bring that to our games, it should hopefully make them stand out, and people get that real vibe of history from playing our games.
Yeah, and because you're kind of like isolated, not completely, but like game developer wise, like who's the closest game developer living to you?
Probably someone in Bristol or Plymouth.
Which, like, how many miles away would that be?
Plymouth is about an hour and a half away. There might be some in Exeter, I don't know, but that's an hour away. But what I often do is go and meet up with Cliff Harris from Positech Games, and also Cass Prince from Puppy Games, Tim Wigsteed, he made Big Pharma.
Does he have a farm?
No, Pharma is in pharmaceutical.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Big Pharma.
Yeah.
It was a sort of pill manufacturing.
So he's a pharmacist?
No, he just made a game about pharmacies, or pharmaceutical factories, So yeah, we often meet up. I say often, every couple of months maybe we meet up for lunch in a pub somewhere, because it is isolated out here. Like if you're in London, there's a London indie scene every week, a bit like,
there's a co-working space.
Yeah, there's co-working spaces. Or Brighton is full of all these developers. Bristol's quite good. But yeah, I am literally in the middle of nowhere. There's probably not even any computer programmers in my town, or for at least 20 miles or whatever. So you've got to make the effort, and that's why I go to things like Develop, and I go to GDC, and I hang out at these things.
Have you showed at EGX?
EGX.
Isn't that like the London PAX?
There's two. There's EGX in Birmingham, actually.
Oh.
Yeah. That's in September though.
Oh, okay.
That's a pretty big deal. That's got the mainstream companies. Then they've got a thing called Rezzed, and now Rezzed is just indie focused, and that's in London.
Oh.
It changes, but that was in London.
How many? Yeah, that sounds cool.
I've exhibited at both, and when we did Shadowhand, we were like wearing. My wife was dressed as Shadowhand, so a highway woman, and I was dressed as a highwayman. I had the hat on and the outfit and all that, and we had the fake guns, and it was kind of cool. It made our stand show up pretty well.
Do you find like showing, because your game's somewhat accessible in the sense that it's turn-based,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
So do you find that kind of when you show at those shows that you kind of stand out in the sea of
arcadey games,
like arcadey games or local multiplayer games or stuff like that?
Yeah, I guess so. I think mostly we stood out just because we were in cosplay effectively, and most people were just like blokes in t-shirts, you know. So
that's the name of my other podcast.
Yeah. So
blokes in t-shirts.
Blokes in t-shirts. So we stood out because of the way we also got our stand looking interesting. We got sort of a treasure chest with coins in it, chocolate coins in. And we had
the old chocolate coins at a game convention trick.
Yeah, it definitely worked for us. So
we did that on Horde.
Oh yeah, did you?
Yeah.
So we had gems and stuff. So that stood out. But yeah, people would sit down and play our Shadowhand demo right from the beginning to the end. And I made about a 20-minute demo, and I could see people at the end sort of like disappointed that it had finished, and I thought that was a good sign. Yeah. So they would sort of go, oh, you know.
So what'd you like, how'd you structure the demo for those type of shows?
Well, it's just really the beginning 4 chapters of the game, because they're the chapters that have a tutorial, because at a show, you've got to have some kind of tutorial so they can understand what's going on. And, yeah, you can cut bits out if you think they're too fiddly or whatever. But we just did the first 4 chapters and made it 20 minutes long. I didn't want an hour-long game, because some people would have played it for an hour, and it would have clogged up the stand. And I didn't want it to be a short throwaway experience. I wanted it to be just enough that people could get into it and go, whoa. So having said that, some people bounced right off it, right? So some people...
we had the same thing.
They would sit down and see the cards and go, holy crap, I don't want to play this, and stand up and walk away immediately. You know?
Yeah.
So you had that with Darkest Dungeon as well?
Yeah, I mean, some people, turn-based RPGs are not their thing. Or they would watch somebody else play it and then kind of sit down and then kind of go like, okay, I saw the last guy get destroyed, so I know where this is going, so I'm just going to cut off early. But I think it's more too to the, like, when you're going to a convention as a guest, like, you're trying to make the most out of every second you have there, right? So I think it's like, I think it's a mix of that. But then we also had people that came back and played the game like multiple times, which was kind of absurd.
Yeah, we had that happen with ours, which is really cool. And they bring their friends back, which we thought must be a good sign, right? So,
yeah.
And I recall some people would sit down though, and they'd sit down with their fingers on WASD, you know, and grab the mouse, and I'd go, this isn't an FPS, you know.
Yeah.
And then they see the cards and leave, you know, as I say. But other people would get really into it and love it, the story, the vibe, the gameplay, because we've combined card play with this turn-based combat. It's never been done before like this, and I think a lot of people found that pretty fascinating, and it does work really well.
So what? So it was still in development last time we talked.
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah.
I heard you say that you're in the point where it's going to be 2 months for the next couple of months. Like, you got 2 months to go for the next little bit, which might be longer, obviously, because it's game development. And I'm just kind of wondering, like, what are the factors that are that you're going to ship it? I'm
going to tell you something first. You see these bumps on the hills up there? They're like 3,000, 4,000-year-old tombs.
How do you...
Bronze Age tombs.
So, like, I can go in them?
And those circles over there, no, they're just covered in dirt, but if you were to dig in them, you might find a skeleton or treasure.
But they don't
stones.
prove it?
A lot of them have been raided, or a lot of them were raided in the past by antiquarians who just dug them up, like Victorians or older people even before that. Or, you know, proper archaeologists have dug them up and taken cool stuff out of them. Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, it's just like you're telling me that, like, a grass bump is a 1,000-year-old tomb, and I go, the only way I can know that for sure is to dig it up.
Yeah. Well, that's what they used. That's how they know, right? They've dug some of them up.
Somewhat makes it a bit, I think, easy, like prompting me to vandalize it.
Yeah, I see. Well, that's why people did, right? But there was also a lot of suspicion around them, so people didn't go in them because they thought the fairy folk lived in them or whatever, and you know, if you dug them up, it'd be bad luck and so on. I mean.
Oh yeah, I guess if you tell me it's a grave and I dig it up, then any bad luck penalties are on me.
Yeah. So I'll just show you another thing in a minute, but I'll tell you about the game first. So, yeah, I think when I've for a year I've been saying the game is 2 months from being done, and that's because I've got this sort of to-do list and I put time estimates on it, and it kept sort of sitting around the 2 or 3 month mark of hours left. But I kept finding like new things to do, which took up more time than I expected. Basically, I had the card game engine already from Regency Solitaire, so that was cool, but adding an RPG, programming an RPG, as you very much know, a turn-based RPG is a hell of a lot of work. There's just so much that can go on with like all the different weapon properties and throwable items and armor and defense and upgrades and blah blah, you know, and
it's
that
a lot,
takes ages to code.
And then especially if you start buffing, buffing stats and
we've got stat buffs with potions and things, so it's just taken a long time to work through that. Plus, it's just me doing the design. Well, I work with my wife. She helps with the design and research, and also art direction, and I do all the game design detail, all the numbers and all the spreadsheets and all the programming. So it's not a big team, and so as a result, I'm wearing many hats, and it's quite time consuming. At least we're working with Power Up Audio, who are doing the sound effects. So you know that saved me some time, and a musician who's doing that. So, just on the right coming up, there's a little grove. I'm going to slow down. It's there, look in there, with stones in. There.
Oh, yeah.
So those stones are called the 9 Maidens, and the tale is that there were 9 maidens who were dancing on Sunday, which you weren't supposed to do, and they all got turned to stone, something like that.
Why can't I dance on Sunday?
I don't know, religious reasons.
Religious reasons.
Yeah. You know, shops didn't used to be open on a Sunday, right? So you weren't allowed to work on that day or something. But that is a Stone Age monument. I mean, it's 4,000 years old or something, so it's pretty cool.
That's pretty old.
Yeah. So the game, I reckon it is probably 2 months out now, because unless this isn't me saying that again, but if it takes any longer, my wife's going to kill me.
Oh, okay.
My publisher Clifsky's going to kill me. I might kill myself. So you know, I need to sort of like.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, you sometimes need those outward pressures to ship a game.
To be fair, they've been there since the beginning, and and I've just been trying to get the thing done, and this is my best work. It's taken 2 years now. My previous longest game was a year, and I know that's not long for some indie
And that was Regency?
Yeah, Regency took a year. I've done other games that took a year, so 2 years is a long time for me, but it's really good. The quality, there's a lot in there. I've learned a hell of a lot from making this game, from all these spreadsheets, balancing things. I also do stuff like automated testing that tests the combat layouts.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, I've got this weapon or this armor against this enemy. What's the percentage chance of beating them? And then I alter the parameters until I'm happy with the balance for the player, right? So I've got a lot of that. And it will run the fight through like 1,000 times and do me a spreadsheet of all the results and all the key values.
Yeah, the automated testing is something that definitely wish we did on Dark Dungeon.
Yeah, I bet you had to do it right. Otherwise, you'd just be.
Well, no, we didn't.
Oh, you didn't?
That kind of testing is kind of set on, like Tyler can estimate a certain amount of it in spreadsheets.
Yeah, fair enough.
But we don't actually have like an in-game. We have like an auto battle thing, but that's really just for if you're like, you just want to kill time. Like you're like, I need to test something in like the 5th round.
Yeah.
We have like a way of doing that. But,
and it gets you to the right round. Yeah, I see.
You kind of need to start from the ground up. It's also, I think, a little bit easier with a card game.
Yeah, well, I mean,
just because you probably don't go in between, you don't walk in between battles, right?
No, that's true. No, they're just there. You can go to them. But there are stuff like to test a chapter 5 battle, for example. I have to give them the correct loadout and hit points and everything that you would be at that point in the game before testing it. So that takes a bit of time to set up, if you see what I mean. But the automated testing's been really useful because, for example, I did all the spreadsheet stuff like Tyler, but then I found that some of my assumptions were wrong. Okay, so I'd think, oh, this stun must be super powerful, right? I better make it only last 1 turn. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So then I tested the game out, and it was like stun did virtually nothing. Anyone who had stun, even if their weapon stunned 100% of the time, it wasn't powerful enough. And I realised, just due to the nature of the card game, it's because sometimes with that stun, you don't get to hit them. You're still charging your weapons up. It's not a guaranteed hit. So I actually now stun for 3 turns, which is long, right? You think that was long in Darkest Dungeon, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, we only do, I think, 1 round stuns.
Yeah, so I do 3 now, which is the same that I poison or bleed for, right? So, but it makes a big difference because you have to collect cards to charge up your weapon. And sometimes you might take 3 rounds to charge your weapon up. So that's why the stun lasts that long. But that was an assumption I'd made in a spreadsheet, but when I tested it, I found it out to be different. And that's happened with a few things, and that's pretty interesting to me. That, you know, as a game designer, you assume an optimal path of play, but you may be missing something pretty big.
Yeah, and until you actually sit down there and actually play it, there's so much stuff that doesn't become noticeable till then.
Yeah, either you play it manually, or if you automate it, you get even more results even quicker. But then you better not have a bug in your automated which I've had plenty of as well. And then you're like, this is giving me really strange results. This can't be right, and it isn't. You know, there's some kind of silly bug.
So you mentioned that you're making this game with your wife.
Yeah.
What tips? Because it's not something everybody does.
No.
I can only think of one other couple.
Colin and Sarah?
Yeah, the Northways.
Yeah.
What advice would you give, assuming your wife doesn't listen to the podcast, that working with your wife, like what are some tips for working with loved ones or working with people that you're stuck with?
Okay.
Regardless.
All right. Well, my main
brothers, kids.
Okay. Well, my main tip. Well, we obviously live in the same house, but she has a separate office to me in the house. So what we do is we come together and have meetings about the design we're going through or the feedback we need to give, you know, artists or whatever. And then she goes back to her space and works, and I work in mine. So I can play whatever music I want and chomp on food or whatever, and it's not going to annoy her, and vice versa, you know. So having your own space, I think, is pretty damn important. And we also, I'm in sync with her at the moment, but often, like, I stay up to 4 a.m. and stuff and get up at midday, and then she gets up early and deals with the kids on the way to school. So often we're very out of sync, and we had to try and find a time in the middle of the day when we focused on work together. I think maybe this happens in flexi-time offices as well. You specify core hours or something.
Yeah, I mean, we have a bit of that, like, working remotely, where there's certain times where things make sense.
Yeah. So I think, you know, the separate space is good. It also worked fairly well in that there was a hierarchy. I don't mean to go all patriarchal or whatever, but it's actually because I was already a game designer for like 8 games. Mm-hmm. So when Helen started working with me, she did defer to my prior experience.
Yeah.
So that sort of, I guess, could stop arguments where if you were like equal, maybe, in terms of experience. However, that isn't to say, you know, that she definitely came up with loads of really great ideas and ideas that I wouldn't have came out with. And she really helps me to validate whether an idea is good or bad, or thrash through concepts and come up with something better. So the whole 2 heads are better than 1 thing is really true of working together, and that's a real pro. So I would say if you're some kind of designer, don't design solo. Run all your ideas past your partner and then thrash them out and get better ideas.
And do you kind of set like household, like, no talks about burn down rate at the dinner table or like anything like that?
Actually, I'm the one who's bad at that, and she gets cross at me if I try and talk about work too much. But other times we go out for lunch and we call it a business lunch, and we'll talk about work walking and then have lunch and talk about work and stuff. So you've got to be careful not to make your whole life about the work. So we spend time watching TV shows and stuff where we're not going on about that.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah.
And the other thing is you've got to assess, like, how well your partner handles the stress of being indie, because indie is a certain stress. Like, you're running out of money, you've got deadlines, you don't know how well the game's going to do, blah blah. And I think my wife finds that more stressful than me. I've been used to it for longer, whatever, and I don't know, I somehow...
You've probably been stressed out about being indie before you even met her, maybe.
Yeah, well, and so I can compartmentalize this kind of stuff, right? And I don't know, and I've actually decided now not to talk about biz dev stuff with her, because when I talk about money in biz dev, she just gets stressed. Or if I talk about how the publisher's in a stink because I'm late again or whatever, she gets stressed by that. Whereas I sort of take it more in my stride. And so I've just decided, look, it's not worth discussing that. Let's just discuss the design and the game itself. But overall, I'm having really good fun. And I know when we said we were working together, her friend said to her, Christ, I'd kill my husband. I could never work with him and blah, blah. And I think a lot of people feel like that. But I'm like, well, why are you even married then? I get on with her really well. And we've got similar interests and we ended up working together.
It's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity to spend time like that with your partner and make something with your partner that's substantial, like a video game. Like it's gonna be 4 person years of time really put into this thing that will be around forever. Yeah. Assuming there's not some sort of great data loss.
Bit rot or whatever.
Yeah.
The internet or something. Well, my old games have been selling for 10 years or more, and so I hope that my newer ones will sell for a long time as well. I mean, I hope so. So yeah, overall, working with my wife has been a good experience. There are tough times, mostly when discussing biz dev, like I've said.
Have you ever done any joke things for Valentine's Day I got you that bug fix that you've been asking forever or something like that?
No, I don't think so. No, I guess I haven't been that creative. One programmer, he did a mobile port of one of my games for me, and he put in it an Easter egg, especially for his now wife, and she was playing the game and she beat this level and it came up with a screen that asked her to marry him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he put that in his game. In his mobile port for me, and she saw it and she agreed and married him. So that was kind of pretty cool.
That's amazing.
A few years back, so.
Especially as a contractor.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, he even asked me. He said, "Do you mind if I, put this in the game just especially for her?" And I said, "Yeah, fine. Knock yourself out. You're the one coding it."
Yeah.
So.
I always wonder too, how smooth you would have to be
What else you should?
What's your Apple? What's your Apple device ID, honey? I'm just curious. Nothing's happening. Just. Yeah.
So that was pretty interesting. So I'm going to have to drop you off in a minute.
Okay. So is there anything else you want to plug? Thanks for being on the question bus again.
Just that I'm going to be doing a webinar with McFunky Pants and Gam Kedo soon in the beginning of August the 5th. I think it's.
I'll make sure I get this episode out before then.
Yeah. Let's see if you get it out before then, and we'll put maybe we can put a link to it. But I'm going to be doing a 20-minute talk online. Along with about 6 other speakers, I think. Chris DeLeon and Krista, he's McFunky Pants. We're all going to be doing some interesting talks. So just keep an eye out for that in August.
How funky is his pants?
I know, he's from Victoria, so you make your own assessment there. So
like Canada, Victoria?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, I'm going to drop you off at your hotel, but thank you for having me on the bus again.
Yeah. Well... What's a good send-off? A good UK send-off?
Cheers, my dears.